My mom secretly moved into my apartment while I was deployed, then changed all the locks. Picture this: you spend 8 months serving your country overseas, dreaming about coming home to your own place, your own bed, your own life. You survive combat zones, sleep in tents, eat military rations, and count down the days until you can walk through your own front door. Now imagine flying halfway around the world, taking 3 different flights, carrying everything you own in a duffel bag, only to discover that your own mother has moved into your apartment, changed the locks, and is now telling you that you are trespassing on her property. If that sounds like the kind of betrayal that would make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty, then buckle up, because what happened when I called the police will leave you absolutely speechless. Before we dive into this insanity, if you have ever had a family member completely violate your trust while you were away and unable to defend yourself, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is going to take you on a ride that you will never forget. Let me start from the beginning, because the level of manipulation and planning that went into this betrayal is something you have to hear to believe. My name is Sarah, and I'm a 26-year-old sergeant in the Army. I had been deployed to Afghanistan for 8 months, which was my second deployment, but my first time being away for such a long period. Before I left, I had been renting a really nice 1-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood about 20 minutes from the base where I was stationed. The apartment was perfect for me. It was in a secure building, had a great view, and most importantly, it was mine. After growing up in a chaotic household and then living in military barracks for several years, having my own space was incredibly important to me. I had saved up money to furnish it exactly how I wanted, and it was the first place that ever truly felt like home. When I got my deployment orders, I knew I would be gone for at least 8 months, possibly longer. I had a few options for what to do with my apartment. I could break my lease and give it up, but I would lose my security deposit and have to find a new place when I came back. I could sublet it to someone else, but that felt risky because I did not want strangers living in my space and potentially damaging my belongings. Or I could keep paying rent while I was gone and just leave it empty. The third option seemed like the smartest choice. My military pay would continue while I was deployed, and I would actually be saving money since I would not have any living expenses overseas. Plus, I would have the peace of mind knowing that my apartment and all my belongings would be exactly where I left them when I returned. My mother, Patricia, had different ideas. Tricia has always been what you might politely call a free spirit, and what you might less politely call completely irresponsible with money. She's 53 years old and has never held a steady job for more than a year. She moves apartments constantly because she either gets evicted for not paying rent or decides she does not like her neighbors or her landlord or the color of the walls. In the 5 years before my deployment, she had lived in at least 8 different places. When Patricia found out that I was going to be deployed, she immediately started hinting that she could help me out by staying in my apartment while I was gone. She could keep an eye on things, she said. She could make sure no one broke in. She could water my plants and collect my mail. She could save me money by not having to pay for storage or worry about my belongings. At first, her offers seemed genuinely helpful. I appreciated that she wanted to help, and part of me thought it might actually be a good arrangement. Patricia would have a stable place to live for a while, and I would have someone I trusted looking after my apartment. Then Patricia started pushing harder. She began talking about how expensive her current rent was and how much money she could save if she did not have to pay for her own place while staying at mine. She started asking questions about my lease and whether my name would still be on it while I was gone. She wanted to know if she could get a key made and if she could change the locks for security purposes. Those questions made me uncomfortable. I started to realize that Patricia was not talking about temporarily staying in my apartment to help me out. She was talking about essentially taking over my apartment while I was gone. When I told her that I appreciated the offer but preferred to keep my apartment exactly as it was while I was deployed, Patricia did not take it well. She accused me of not trusting her. She said I was being selfish by keeping an empty apartment when she needed a place to live. She said that family should help family and that I was choosing money over my own mother. The conversation escalated into a huge fight where Patricia accused me of thinking I was better than her because I had a steady job and a nice apartment. She said I had forgotten where I came from and that the military had made me cold and heartless. She stormed out of my apartment and did not speak to me for 2 weeks before I left for deployment. I felt terrible about the fight, but I also felt like I had made the right decision. My apartment was my sanctuary, my one stable thing in a life that had been defined by constant moves and uncertainty. I was not ready to give that up, even temporarily. The night before I left for deployment, Patricia called me. She apologized for the fight and said she understood my decision. She said she was proud of me for serving my country and that she would miss me while I was gone. She asked if she could at least have a spare key so she could check on the apartment occasionally and make sure everything was okay. Against my better judgment, I said yes. I gave Patricia a spare key and asked her to maybe stop by once a month just to make sure there were no problems with leaks or break-ins. I specifically told her that she was not to stay there or move any of my belongings or make any changes to the apartment. Patricia agreed to everything. She hugged me goodbye and promised to take good care of my place while I was gone. I should have known better. I should have listened to my instincts. But Patricia was my mother, and I wanted to believe that she would respect my boundaries and keep her promises. What happened next was 8 months of lies, manipulation, and planning that I did not discover until it was almost too late. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely while you were in a situation where you could not defend yourself or protect your interests? Comment below and let me know, because what my mother did while I was deployed was beyond anything I could have imagined. For the first few months of my deployment, everything seemed fine. Patricia would text me occasionally with updates about my apartment. "Everything looks great," she would say. "No problems at all. Your plants are doing well. I am taking good care of everything." I was busy with my duties overseas and grateful that I did not have to worry about my apartment. Patricia seemed to be keeping her word, and I was relieved that our fight before I left had not damaged our relationship permanently. But then I started noticing small things that did not quite add up. In one of Patricia's texts, she mentioned that she had to call a plumber because there was a small leak in the bathroom. That seemed reasonable, and I was grateful that she had taken care of it. But when I asked for details about what had been fixed and how much it cost, Patricia was vague. She said it was just a minor issue and not to worry about it. A few weeks later, Patricia mentioned that she had to call an electrician because one of the outlets in the bedroom was not working. Again, I appreciated that she was handling these issues, but I was starting to wonder why so many things were breaking down in an apartment that was supposed to be sitting empty. Then Patricia started asking strange questions. She wanted to know about my lease terms and when it was up for renewal. She asked about my relationship with my landlord and whether I had ever had any problems with the building management. She wanted to know if I had renter's insurance and whether it would cover certain types of damage. These questions made me nervous, but I was thousands of miles away and dealing with my own stressful situation. I did not have the mental energy to interrogate Patricia about every detail of what was happening with my apartment. The first real red flag came about 5 months into my deployment when I tried to call my apartment's main line to ask the building manager about renewing my lease. The building manager seemed confused when I identified myself and said that he had been dealing with my mother about all apartment-related issues for the past several months. When I asked what he meant, the building manager explained that Patricia had been living in the apartment full-time and had told him that she was my authorized representative while I was deployed. He said Patricia had signed paperwork to have the utilities switched to her name and had requested that all building communications go through her instead of me. I was shocked. I immediately called Patricia and asked her to explain what was going on. Patricia's story was that she had been staying at the apartment more frequently than originally planned because her current living situation had become unbearable. Her roommate was supposedly crazy and threatening, and Patricia needed a safe place to stay. She swore that it was only temporary and that she would move out before I came home. I was not happy about this development, but I was also worried about Patricia's safety if her living situation was really as bad as she described. I told her that she could stay at my apartment temporarily, but that she needed to move out at least a month before I returned so I could come home to my own space. Patricia agreed enthusiastically. She thanked me for understanding and promised that she would be out long before I came home. But Patricia had been lying about everything. About a month before I was scheduled to return home, I called Patricia to ask about her plans for moving out. She seemed surprised by the question and said that we had never discussed her moving out. She said that she had been taking such good care of the apartment that she thought I would be grateful for her to continue staying there even after I returned. I was furious. I reminded Patricia that our agreement had been that she would move out before I came home and that the apartment was mine, not hers. I told her that she needed to start making arrangements to find her own place immediately. Patricia's response was to get angry and defensive. She said that she had been paying all the utilities and taking care of all the maintenance issues while I was gone, and that I should be grateful for her help. She said that she had put her own money and effort into improving the apartment and that she deserved to stay there. When I pointed out that the apartment was in my name and that I had been paying rent the entire time I was deployed, Patricia claimed that the money she had spent on utilities and maintenance meant that she had just as much right to the apartment as I did. The conversation ended with Patricia hanging up on me after saying that she was not going to be kicked out of her home by her own ungrateful daughter. That was when I realized that Patricia had never intended to move out. She had used my deployment as an opportunity to essentially steal my apartment and she was now claiming that it belonged to her. But I was still thousands of miles away and scheduled to be deployed for another month. There was nothing I could do except hope that Patricia would come to her senses and move out before I returned. She did not. 2 weeks before I was scheduled to fly home, I called my apartment building to confirm some details about my lease renewal. The building manager informed me that Patricia had signed a new lease in her own name and that my lease had been terminated. I was so shocked I could barely speak. How was that possible? I asked. The apartment was in my name, and I had been paying rent the entire time I was deployed. The building manager explained that Patricia had provided documentation showing that I had permanently relocated for military reasons and that I had assigned my lease to her. She had apparently forged my signature on paperwork transferring the lease to her name. I immediately called Patricia and demanded an explanation. This time, she did not even pretend to be apologetic or defensive. She was triumphant. "Sarah," she said, "I have been living here for 8 months and I have made this place my home. I have put my own money into this apartment and I have established residency here. You were gone and you were not using it, so I claimed it. Possession is 9/10 of the law." When I told her that what she had done was illegal and that I was going to contact the building management and the police, Patricia laughed. She said that she had covered all her bases legally and that there was nothing I could do about it. She said that I should be grateful that she had kept the apartment in good condition and that I could find my own place when I got back. And Patricia said something that I will never forget. She said that I had been selfish and ungrateful my entire life, and that it was time for me to learn that the world did not revolve around me. She said that I had more money than she did because of my military pay, and that it was only fair for her to have the apartment since she needed it more than I did. I hung up and immediately started making phone calls to figure out what my legal options were. What I discovered was that Patricia had been incredibly thorough in her planning. She had not just moved into my apartment impulsively. She had spent months carefully laying the groundwork to steal it from me legally. You want to know what I found out about the extent of my mother's betrayal and what I did when I finally made it home? Trust me, you are not going to believe how far she had gone to steal my entire life. Over the next week, I worked with a military legal assistance attorney to investigate exactly what Patricia had done while I was deployed. What we uncovered was a level of planning and deception that was honestly impressive in its thoroughness and horrifying in its cruelty. First, Patricia had indeed forged my signature on multiple legal documents. She had signed a lease transfer agreement, a utility transfer form, and a change of address notification with the post office. She had used my personal information to convince the building management that I had authorized her to act on my behalf. It went much deeper than that. Patricia had also been intercepting my mail for months. She had filed a change of address form, redirecting all of my mail to a post office box that she controlled. This meant that I never received any of the official notifications about the lease transfer or the utility changes. As far as the building management knew, I had been properly notified and had not objected to any of the changes. Patricia had also been using my identity to set up services in her name at the apartment. She had gotten internet service, cable television, and had even opened a new credit card account using my information and the apartment address. She had been building a paper trail showing that she was the legitimate resident of the apartment. Most shocking of all, Patricia had been collecting my security deposit and last month's rent from my previous lease by claiming that I had moved out permanently. She had pocketed that money and used it to pay the deposit and first month's rent on the new lease in her name. The military attorney explained that what Patricia had done constituted multiple federal crimes, including mail fraud, identity theft, and forgery. The attorney helped me file complaints with the appropriate authorities, but warned me that criminal prosecution could take months or years and might not result in me getting my apartment back. The attorney suggested that my best option was to return home and handle the situation as a civil matter, while also pursuing criminal charges against Patricia. So that is exactly what I did. I flew home from Afghanistan with everything I owned in a duffel bag, expecting to walk into my own apartment and start rebuilding my life after deployment. Instead, I took a taxi from the airport to my apartment building, walked up to my door, and discovered that my key no longer worked. I stood in the hallway of my own building, in front of my own apartment, unable to get inside. I could hear music and television noise coming from inside the apartment, and I could see that the peephole had been covered from the inside. I knocked on the door. Patricia answered, and when she saw me standing there, she did not look surprised or guilty or apologetic. She looked annoyed. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I live here," I said. "This is my apartment." "Not anymore," Patricia replied. "This is my apartment now and you are trespassing. If you do not leave immediately, I am going to call the police." I could not believe what I was hearing. Patricia was standing in the doorway of my own apartment, wearing my clothes, threatening to call the police on me for trying to enter my own home. "Fine," I said, "call the police. Let us see what they have to say about this situation." So Patricia called the police, and I waited in the hallway with my duffel bag like a homeless person being evicted from my own life. When the police arrived, Patricia presented them with her lease agreement, her utility bills, and her identification showing the apartment address. She explained that I was her daughter who had been deployed overseas and was now trying to force my way into her home. I showed the police my military identification, my original lease agreement, and bank records showing that I had been paying rent on the apartment for the past 8 months. I explained that Patricia had forged documents and stolen my apartment while I was deployed. The situation was complicated enough that the police officers said they could not determine who had the legal right to the apartment on the spot. They said it appeared to be a civil matter that would need to be resolved in court. In the meantime, they suggested that I find somewhere else to stay while Patricia remained in the apartment. I was devastated. I had just returned from 8 months of military deployment, and I was essentially homeless because my own mother had stolen my apartment and convinced the authorities that she was the rightful resident. But I was not going to give up without a fight. Do you know what it feels like to have someone steal your entire life while you are serving your country, and then have them act like you are the one in the wrong for wanting it back? Let me know in the comments, because what happened next was a legal and emotional battle that lasted months and changed my relationship with my mother forever. I spent my first night back from deployment sleeping on a cot in a military friend's garage because I had nowhere else to go. The next morning, I went straight to a civilian attorney who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes and identity theft cases. The attorney reviewed all of my documentation and confirmed what the military legal assistance attorney had told me. Patricia had committed multiple crimes, but getting my apartment back was going to require a legal process that could take weeks or months. The attorney filed an emergency motion for me to be granted immediate access to the apartment, but the judge said that since Patricia had a signed lease and had been living there for several months, she could not be removed immediately without proper legal proceedings. So I was stuck. Patricia was living in my apartment, sleeping in my bed, using my belongings, and I was essentially homeless while the legal system slowly ground through the process of proving that my own mother had stolen my life. But while I was waiting for the legal process to play out, I decided to do some investigating of my own, and what I discovered about Patricia's financial situation and her long-term plans was even more disturbing than what she had already done. I started by talking to neighbors in my apartment building. What I learned was that Patricia had been telling everyone that I had died in combat overseas and that she was my grieving mother who had inherited my apartment. She had been accepting sympathy and even donations from neighbors who felt sorry for her loss. Patricia had also been telling people that she was planning to stay in the apartment permanently and that she was looking for a job in the area. She had been presenting herself as a permanent resident, not someone who was temporarily watching the place for her deployed daughter. But the most shocking discovery came when I managed to get access to my credit report. Patricia had not only opened a credit card account in my name, she had also taken out a personal loan using my identity and the apartment as collateral. She had been using my credit and my apartment to borrow money that she had no intention of paying back. When I confronted Patricia about the credit accounts and the lies she had been telling the neighbors, she did not deny any of it. She said that she had done what she needed to do to survive, and that I should understand that she was my mother and deserved my help. Patricia also revealed that she had been planning this for much longer than I had realized. She admitted that she had been researching tenant rights and identity theft techniques for months before I was deployed. She had used my deployment as an opportunity to execute a plan she had been developing for a long time. The most infuriating part was that Patricia genuinely seemed to believe that she was entitled to take my apartment and my identity because I was her daughter and she had raised me. She kept saying that everything I had achieved was only possible because of her sacrifices as a mother, and that I owed her for everything she had given me growing up. When I pointed out that stealing someone's apartment and identity was not the same thing as asking for help or support, Patricia accused me of being selfish and ungrateful. She said that I had more opportunities than she did because of my military career, and that it was only fair for her to take advantage of those opportunities when I was not using them. The conversation was so frustrating and surreal that I finally just walked away. I realized that Patricia was never going to admit that what she had done was wrong, and that trying to reason with her was pointless. Instead, I focused on building the strongest possible legal case against her. 3 months after I returned from deployment, the court case finally went to trial. I had documentation proving that Patricia had forged my signature, stolen my identity, and lied to multiple people and organizations about my death and her right to my apartment. Patricia's defense was that I had abandoned the apartment by being deployed, and that she had acted in good faith to preserve my belongings and maintain the property. She claimed that any documentation issues were simple misunderstandings, and that she had never intended to permanently take over my apartment. The judge was not impressed with Patricia's defense. The evidence of forgery and identity theft was overwhelming, and Patricia's own admissions about her long-term plans contradicted her claims that she had been acting temporarily and in good faith. Patricia was ordered to immediately vacate my apartment and return all keys and personal belongings. She was also ordered to pay restitution for the rent money she had stolen, the credit accounts she had opened in my name, and the legal fees I had incurred fighting to get my own apartment back. The judge also ordered Patricia to serve 6 months in county jail for identity theft and fraud. Patricia was shocked by the jail sentence and begged the judge to reconsider, saying that she was just a mother who had made some mistakes while trying to help her daughter. The judge replied that identity theft and fraud were serious crimes regardless of the relationship between the perpetrator and the victim, and that Patricia's actions had been too deliberate and extensive to be considered simple mistakes. When the bailiff led Patricia away in handcuffs, she looked at me with pure hatred and said that I had destroyed our family and that she would never forgive me for sending my own mother to jail. I felt sad about how everything had ended, but I also felt relieved that the nightmare was finally over. Or so I thought. When I was finally able to move back into my apartment, I discovered that Patricia had not just been living there. She had been systematically destroying and stealing my belongings while making it look like normal wear and tear. My furniture had been damaged or broken in ways that looked accidental, but were clearly deliberate. My clothes had been altered or stained beyond repair. My electronics had been tampered with so that they would malfunction after a few uses. My personal photographs and documents had been thrown away or destroyed. Patricia had essentially gutted my entire life while making it appear that she had been taking good care of my belongings. I filed additional insurance claims and police reports about the destroyed property, but recovering the sentimental value of things like family photographs and personal mementos was impossible. It took me almost a year to rebuild my apartment and my life to something resembling what it had been before my deployment. I had to replace almost everything I owned, rebuild my credit score, and deal with the emotional trauma of being betrayed so completely by my own mother. Patricia served her full 6-month jail sentence and was released on probation. She was also ordered to continue paying restitution to me for several years. But Patricia was not done trying to punish me for holding her accountable for her crimes. After her release from jail, Patricia started a campaign to turn the rest of our family against me. She told everyone that I had been vindictive and cruel to send my own mother to jail over a simple misunderstanding. She said that I had abandoned her when she needed help and had chosen money and possessions over family loyalty. Some family members believed Patricia's version of events and stopped speaking to me. Others demanded that I drop the restitution payments and forgive Patricia for her mistakes. A few relatives accused me of being heartless for not understanding that Patricia had been struggling financially and had just made some poor decisions. I was amazed by how many people seemed to think that being related to someone gave them the right to steal your identity and destroy your life without consequences. But I was done making excuses for Patricia and done prioritizing family harmony over my own well-being. I had served my country overseas and come home to discover that my own mother had stolen my life. I was not going to apologize for protecting myself and seeking justice. I told family members who sided with Patricia that they were welcome to support her financially and emotionally if they thought her actions were acceptable, but that I was not going to pretend that identity theft and fraud were forgivable just because we were related. Most of the family drama died down after a few months when it became clear that I was not going to change my mind or drop the charges against Patricia. Patricia finished paying her restitution 2 years ago and has apparently rebuilt her life somewhere across the country. We have not spoken since the day she was sentenced, and I have no interest in reestablishing contact with her. Some people think I was too harsh on Patricia and that family should forgive family no matter what, but I learned something important from this experience. Being related to someone does not give them the right to abuse your trust or steal your life, and protecting yourself from people who hurt you is not cruel or vindictive, even if those people are family. Patricia made a calculated decision to steal my apartment and my identity while I was deployed and unable to defend myself. She planned her crimes carefully and executed them thoroughly. She showed no remorse when confronted and only expressed regret when she faced consequences. Those are not the actions of someone who made a mistake or who deserves automatic forgiveness just because we share DNA. I am proud of myself for fighting back and holding Patricia accountable for her actions. I am proud of myself for not letting family pressure convince me to drop the charges or accept her behavior. And I am proud of myself for rebuilding my life after Patricia tried to destroy it. If you are dealing with a family member who is taking advantage of you or abusing your trust, I want you to know that it is okay to protect yourself. It is okay to set boundaries. It is okay to seek legal recourse when someone breaks the law, even if that person is family. You do not owe anyone your apartment, your identity, your credit, or your peace of mind just because you are related to them. And you are not obligated to forgive people who deliberately hurt you just to keep the peace in your family. What do you think about this situation? Did Patricia get what she deserved, or should I have been more understanding about her financial struggles? Should family loyalty trump legal accountability, or do some betrayals cross a line that cannot be uncrossed? Let me know in the comments below. And if you have ever dealt with a family member who stole from you or violated your trust while you were unable to defend yourself, I would love to hear your story. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who hurt us the most, but that does not mean we have to accept that treatment. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories about family betrayal, identity theft, and learning to protect yourself from people who do not have your best interests at heart. Remember, being generous and loving toward your family does not mean being a doormat. You can care about people while still holding them accountable for their actions. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their choices. Until next time, protect yourself, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve to be treated badly just because you share their last name.